The Behind the Mask podcast explores some heavy and distressing issues. In this particular episode, we discuss themes pertaining to youth homelessness and suicide. If either of these themes are triggering for you, I hope you can listen in a safe and comfortable environment. If you can't right now, I hope you can come back to the episode when you do feel safe and ready. Here at Behind the Mask, we acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are the original storytellers and custodians of the land on which we live and meet today. Behind the Mask is a podcast about sharing authentic stories. And in continuing that legacy of storytelling, we acknowledge that we're honouring and celebrating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' traditions, customs and stories. And we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
The number that we know of children and young people who are coming to homelessness services alone, so not with family members, and in crisis, is 40,000 young people across the country.
How many of that 40,000 experience some form of family violence?
Probably about 80-90%.
How did you go about trying to end your life?
I was thinking because I don't want to jump in front of a car. What if I just break my leg and nothing happens? I don't know how to swim. So I was like, okay, and Auckland was not far from where I was. So I was like, that's the way to go.
My experience did not look like physical harm, which is very, often clear to people when you're experiencing family violence. It was unknown, it was unsafe, it was scary, but also tied in with a lot of love and confusion.
Until I found out that, okay, I don't have resources, I don't have financial support of family anymore because of the sexuality and the issues with the family and the family violence.
You've come out to your family and they haven't accepted you for that.
That's right.
I'm Josh Pitterman and welcome to Season 3 of the Behind the Mask podcast. This is set to be our most spicy, controversial and thought-provoking season yet. We'll be taking a dive into the esoteric, the taboo and some of the most pressing issues that profoundly affect us all. We'll hear from specialists in the areas of sex, war, business, psychedelics, homelessness, mental health and more. And as always, they'll open up with their heart stories as well as the tools and wisdoms they've used to find healing, inspiration, meaning and purpose in life. Get ready to be inspired once again by the depths of the human experience. It's time to go behind the mask. Between singing, writing, podcasting, presenting, coaching, gym, Pilates, yoga, breathwork, meditation, ice bath, saunas, staying well can feel like a full-time job. Thankfully, Wanderlust Mushroom Multis over here is a craft blend of 7 mushrooms, including organic reishi, turkey tail, and shiitake mushroom, rooted in traditional Chinese medicine. Reishi supports a healthy immune system and may help relieve coughs, while its antioxidant properties work to reduce free radicals. This hero mushroom is also used traditionally to help support vitality and replenish qi. With 1 capsule a day, it's a simple way to add functional mushrooms into your wellness routine. Clean and potent with minimal fillers, you can find Wanderlust Mushroom Multi at your local Chemist Warehouse or order it online now. Today, I'm joined in the Roland Media studio by 2 exceptional humans. Shorna Moore is a social justice lawyer. She's the head of policy, advocacy and government relations at the Melbourne City Mission. She also heads up what's known as Home Time, which is a national campaign which is helping to solve the problem that young people are facing with regards to the housing crisis. Elvis Martin is an international award-winning speaker. He is the youngest member of the LGBTQIA+ task force. He's also on the anti-racism task force, and he also serves on the board of the Victorian Mental Illness Awareness Council. Today, we are going behind the mask of youth homelessness. Shorna, Elvis, welcome to the Behind the Mask podcast. It's so good to have you guys on.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the opportunity.
I'm going to start with you, Shorna. Can you tell me what age bracket we consider to be youth in Australia and how many youths are considered homeless?
A really good question.
Yep.
A bit of a topical one, I guess, when it comes to the difference between a child and a youth.
Yeah, that's
but
why I wanted
for
to.
now, we'll talk about youth or young people as probably the age between about 15 and 24 years old.
Okay, 15 and 24.
Yeah, and so when it comes to the prevalence or the number that we know of children and young people who are coming to homelessness services alone, so not with family members, and in crisis, there's 40,000 young people across the country, and at least 10,000 of those older teenagers between 15 to 17 years old.
Wow.
And many of them are young girls.
It's really, so it's more young girls, young women than young men.
In that children age bracket, in the older teenagers and adolescents who are by themselves and have no family, have no home and no support system.
Wow. How many of that 40,000 experience some form of family violence?
Our data suggests, our data and many other youth homelessness organisations across the country, probably about 80-90%. That is the main reason we have a youth homelessness crisis, is because of the family violence crisis. It is not simply a women's issue.
Yep.
It is also the children and young people who are experiencing family violence in the homes and having to escape with no housing options inside.
So run me through home time. Sort of touched on it in the intro, but run me through what it is, how it is going, how you formulated the idea, or who's behind this idea, and why we know why we need it, but what is the sort of the movement with it?
Sure. Well, I think the main reason we've created the Home Time campaign, which involves almost 200 organisations made up of universities, peak bodies, unions, industry experts, is because in Australia we have a housing system that doesn't differentiate between a child or an adult like we have with the health systems or the justice systems. We don't have a youth housing system. So what this campaign is bringing together a collective across the country. It's a collective voice campaign really shaped by people like Elvis and young people with lived experience of homelessness to unlock housing and really set up that housing system dedicated to young people. So we have a huge supporter base of organisations as well as community members that have said enough's enough for decades and decades, that they want to see a dedicated housing system for young people so that we don't have a situation where you've got a 16 or 17-year-old competing with a 40 or 50-year-old for the same houses.
And what does the system look like?
Currently?
Yeah.
There are no youth tenancies built in to the housing system. It's a commodity. It's regulated by the market and pricing. So we've got children who are trying to get these rental properties, private rental market, which is just a joke. And we've also got social housing. Too expensive. And that's for people, for children who are escaping violent homes and have to go on the youth homelessness payment, which is youth allowance. That is just too low to cover any cost and much lower than any other income given to adults who are experiencing homelessness. But also, if you're working as a young person and you end up having to flee a violent home or parents have passed away or whatever the reason is you can't live at home, the awards for employment are also really low. So you really can't compete in the private rental market. And the social housing market as well, there's no pathway in for a child or young person on youth allowance because the amount they're given by the federal government of youth allowance is too low to meet just the running costs of a tenancy. So there is literally no housing system for young people based purely on their age. It's just discriminatory.
Yeah, it's impossible.
It's impossible. So what we're seeing, very sadly, is children growing up in homelessness refuges, the streets and services, with no way out. Up to 5 years, just waiting to get onto an adult income or be seen as an adult by landlords. And sadly, we're seeing a spike in so many of those young people with no hope dying.
There's so many repercussions. Death is obviously one of them, but we'll get into some of the other dangers and things that they face. Elvis, you're doing amazing things now. One thing that I didn't mention is that you've spoken, represented Australia speaking to the UN. I mean, it's extraordinary where you've got to, but it wasn't always like this. You're a big advocate for sharing lived experience, for breaking down, stigmas and shames around that lived experience, for embracing, vulnerability as a strength and as power, and you want others to tell their stories. Shorna already alluded to it. You have a story. You weren't always where you are now. Can you tell us your story of arriving at a state of homelessness as a 17-year-old?
So when I came to Australia as an international student, I was just navigating life in the country and understanding, just learning about Melbourne and Australia. And then I found out I started having issues with my family because of
back home in the Middle
sexuality
East.
back home, and with sexuality and challenges with that. And that's where things started to fall apart, right? From coming from a very supportive...
Because you're an outwardly proud gay man.
Yeah. And part of LGBTI community. So I started to have that conversations with family and how it didn't went down well. And I have always said that anyone can experience hardship and homelessness. It's not just... some people don't see that, how can I ever experience? I come from a very supported family. I never thought that I would experience something like that. And until I found out that, I don't have resources. I don't have financial support of family anymore because of the sexuality and the issues with the family and the family violence.
So it's as simple as you've come out to your family and they haven't accepted you for that.
That's right. And then after that,
Elvis,
from
I'm so sorry.
It's not been easy, and I think I'm not the only person in that boat. There are many young people who go through that, and as Shorna have highlighted, that there are many young people who experience homelessness because of family violence and challenges with it. So then after that, from an amazing apartment, fully supported by a family, to rough sleeping and couch surfing. Those who don't know, yes, and those who don't know what couch surfing is, sleeping at friends' place, and from place to place, basically. So with that challenges, it was difficult. Right? It was I come from a very supported family, so for me it was crazy experience. It was something that I was just not able to. Like now I advocate for reducing the stigma. I just felt like I was judging my own situation in that time. In that moment, I was like, I was not able to accept that I was experiencing that, right? And I was not able to cope up with the stigma that comes with it.
So you felt a lot of shame?
A lot of shame, right? Yeah. And how will I get out of this situation? How will I... I was just not able to see a way forward. Right. And that's where things become more worse. And that's where I decided to end my life. And that's where I end up in hospital and emergency and in recovery for 6 months. And that's where it all started.
Okay.
Right?
So just take me back a step. So you've come out to your family, they haven't accepted it.
Yeah.
Your support's been cut off.
Completely, yeah.
Completely cut off. You're couch surfing. You're on the streets as well. And there's so much, you said, there's so much shame attached to it. What was it like for you? What was beyond just the shame and the stigma you felt, what was it actually like living on the streets and couch?
It's not easy, right? Is
it dangerous?
It is dangerous, right?
Can you share some of that?
It's dangerous. It's unsafe. Did
anything ever happen to you in those that you went? This feels unsafe
really.
to me, or
yes, this feels unsafe to me, definitely, but not really that. You have been attacked or anything like that. That didn't happen. But I'll touch on that. With couch surfing, it's not always easy. Friends can support you, but there's always a limit how far they can go and how much they can support. With being on the street, not many people. So the people that you see rough sleeping on the street is a very small number. I think it's 2% of the people experiencing homelessness. Many people also who are still rough sleeping, but they hide from public, and that's what I did. Right?
You didn't want to be seen.
I don't want to be seen. Right? There's a lot of stigma when people are. There was one incident, as you pointed out. There was some young people living at Etihad. I think there was a footy match or something like that. The Marvel Stadium now used to be called Etihad back then. And I remember them throwing cans. And that's all I can remember in terms of feeling completely unsafe. And then you also have to take in account
So
the
hold on, you were at
life.
Marble. You were
Yes.
finding a spot there, and people were throwing things at you.
Yeah, behind, right,
Oh.
on the corner of, and you also have to understand that the challenges of day-to-day life, right? Where do you charge your phone, and how do you manage
Where
it?
do you do? Like, how does it work?
Southern Cross Station, for me, the Southern Cross Station waiting room, and sometimes, like when I go for a walk, sometimes I see people doing that, and I understand, and it really bring back memories of like people charging phone in the Southern Cross waiting area. There's a waiting area near Hungry Jack's. There's a Southern Cross Station have a waiting area. So
What were you doing for food? What were you doing for
it's a challenge
for clothing?
Yeah.
For to have a shower? How were you managing all of that?
It's so I had a friend, and she was supporting me as long as she can, and so it wasn't easy. It wasn't. Even she did as much as she can, and getting through the day to day was a nightmare. So for me, the only path I saw forward was ending the life.
And so those mental health battles that you struggle with, just what were the sort of conversations that you were having with yourself that led to that? Because
I can't get through a day, not one more day like this. This is just not going to. Just feeling like not having that option of, you know, because I also didn't had the courage to ask for support, right? And it takes a lot to ask. I grown up in a family which was very supported, and for me, asking for help was just not. I just didn't feel comfortable, right? It's very courageous to ask for help, and I did not have that courage. So for me, it was, I was not able to ask, and I was not able to seek, and when it comes to services, I was not eligible
Mm.
to get the support. So
you found no other way but to.
yeah, that was in that moment. That's what I thought. That's.
And what was, if you don't mind me asking, how did you go about trying to end your life?
I won't go into too much of detail because it
That's
will
fine.
just. But in Dockland, because I didn't know how to swim, and I was like, before I made an attempt, I was thinking, because I don't want to jump in front of a car. What if I just break my leg and nothing happens? And towards the end where I was of the Latrobe Street, close to the Dockland, the cars usually go very slow. It's not really a fast zone. So for me, I don't want to do something that I still hurt myself, but I'm still alive, right? So I wanted it to be something, and I don't know how to swim, so I was like, okay, and Auckland was not far from where I was, so I was like, that's the way to go.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that. So you wind up in hospital.
Yeah.
You have an unsuccessful suicide attempt, and
Many after that.
how many times did you try and take your life?
To my medical records, 33. Yeah. So what happened is that first time when I woke up, I still remember just feeling like, oh, I failed. I can't, oh, I'm just back. And now I'm back with a bigger trouble, which now hospital is involved, police is involved. Like, I don't know what to do. I remember sneaking into the nursing station, uh, uh, getting medications, whatever medications that I can get hold of, just taking them. So it in a hope of whatever I can, because I was in an involuntary. I was under involuntary admission, so it was not a voluntary admission. That means I know that there's no way out of the hospital, so I'm not going out into the heavy security. Um, yeah,
33 suicide attempts over what period of time?
1.5 years.
It's like
So
one every 6
setting
days.
myself something like that, and I was so they used to bring me back to the normal ward, and in a day or two, I'm back to emergency.
and
And
did it ever cross your mind to try and find a way to get home? To speak to your
no,
parents?
that was just not possible. The conversations that I had prior to experiencing homelessness, I was aware that that is just
What would have happened if you were home?
killed. Right? So that was just not possible. And I was very clear that I'm not going to let someone else end my life. I want to be in control of my and that the whole thing ended up becoming control. Like who will you do exactly what we ask you to do, and I just wanted to live my life and be who I am.
On your
Uh,
terms?
yeah, and it was not extreme. I was not expecting something extreme, and it's just basic human rights, right? And that didn't work out. It went well. I did what I can. I did try to explain myself. Uh, I said things like, "I won't be in a relationship ever again. Uh, uh, we don't have to talk about it." But nothing was on the table.
There
And
was no room for compromise.
yeah, no, it's for them, it's our term.
Yeah.
It's like for them, it was like my way or the highway.
Yeah. And you
Uh,
you obviously don't speak to
no,
them. Okay.
or they don't want to speak.
Thank you for sharing that, mate. Thank you. That's oh, yeah, that was very brave of you to share that in the way that you did. Um, you're now an expert in your field. You're an award-winning speaker. You share your story to empower others to not carry the shames and stigmas that you suffered with that led to all those suicide attempts. And what shifted? How
A
does someone
conversation.
become a conversation? What happened? Tell me about the conversation.
So I was in emergency, back with taking 100 Panadols. End up there from normal the normal wards of the hospital, still in a hospital, right? To emergency back again. And
100 Panadols.
yeah, that's right. So it nearly killed me and damaged my kidneys and all sorts of things. It had a lot of health uh, consequences. Uh, Still not dead, right? I was like,
Something wanted to keep you here.
yeah, and
Someone wanted to keep you here, Elvis.
and this nurse. So whenever I used to do something like that, they used to have a casual nurse from an agency who sit next to me just to monitor that I don't do something else, right? Instead of them tying me up to bed, right? And so in that sense, so the nurse used to like always there used to be someone or a security guard constantly watching for even when I'm in that situation. So the person, she told me, whenever you do something, I get an extra shift. So for me, it's good, right? But
It's so
for
dark.
and she said, but for you, when will you give up? And she said, when will you stop? You'll end up becoming a vegetable. You're damaging your body parts. one day you'll end up becoming a vegetable, but you're not dying. So she said, I'm Catholic. My son just came out a few years ago. My family didn't accept it, and I moved out with my son to support my son. She said, family is not, you don't have to always, people choose family, like a chosen family. And it was a conversation that really touched me. And she said, you can be a voice for people. You can do things by yourself. You don't need someone else to hold your finger and guide you, and you can build your life by yourself. Right? And it was a very deep conversation. And in the morning, she finished and she's gone. And I reflected. I reflected a lot on that, and it didn't happen. Like, that was one of the main things, and that was the start of me accepting counseling. Until then, I was not able to trust medical professionals, and I was very paranoid about the threats that was coming through from family, from extended family, and it was just too much for me to take, right? And I have seen this, like, when I was a very shy person, very quiet person, and from that to go completely, like, with, after experiencing so much, to go and really be a speaker, and that's a completely different end of what I was. And I think I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't go through the experience that I went through. So yeah, that shaped me.
So she lit something inside of you that enabled you to begin
That's
sort of
right.
a bit of an inward reflection about.
Yeah. And I think that's what I say, that you don't know what people are going through, and as you might think that you're not making a difference in someone's life, but just a conversation can really save a life. And so for me, definitely,
Not just
that was
save it, totally change a life.
yeah.
Totally change the path that you were on.
Yeah, completely. From constantly,
Can she be named?
she can be named, but
'Cause
for me, so I can name her. I reached out to the hospital. Her name is Caroline, but I reached out to the hospital.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Caroline, please.
And I reached out. I gave a hospital small cards and things like that, and they said that because of the privacy reasons, they can't put me in touch with her. But she was amazing human being, and if she's listening, thank you. I really appreciate what you did for me, and people like that are real gems.
We've all got a heart story to tell, don't we? The one that lives behind the many masks we wear. On this show, you get to hear those stories from our incredible guests who come on each episode and share theirs. Now it's time I shared mine. Last year was the hardest one I've faced in my life and career. There were 2 vocal surgeries, a high-speed near-death experience, and the ongoing health struggles of my father. It felt like the most appropriate time to put pen to paper. The Behind the Mask book is memoir meets self-development, an opportunity to share the wild, honest, funny, and at times very vulnerable anecdotes of a career in showbiz, intertwined with the lessons, learnings, and wisdoms I've gained along the way. I share my struggles with anxiety, imposter syndrome, health battles, eating disorders, and that feeling of not enoughness. Most importantly, I share how I moved through it. My intention is not only for you to really meet this human being beyond the many iterations of human doing, but to help you navigate your way through life with a deeper sense of self, meaning, and purpose. I truly hope you come along for the ride and grab yourself a copy. The book is available at online stores or in stores, but I recommend purchasing through the great people at Readings. Head to readings.com.au to get your copy. Shorna, you touched on a bit about the housing situation, but how is youth homelessness different to adult homelessness?
Yeah.
What are the typical factors that lead to it? Like this sounds like a story that other people might be experiencing. You talked about family violence. Talk about some of the differences and the factors that lead to it.
I think, well, I should probably start by saying most of the people that you see on the street became homeless about the age of 15, 16. So it starts young. And homelessness is not just without a house, especially for young people, as we've heard from Elvis. It's about the lack of family and supports in a time where you're developing, like your brain hasn't developed. You should be at school, learning from your families about learning, the things I'm teaching my children. Like it's way more than a roof over your head. It's about the support that's needed. So this is why it's very dangerous for children to be without housing, because they're still learning the living skills, the life skills that we normally learn as a young person, when we come home from school, hence the name of home time. It's about having a home.
It's a beautiful name.
Yeah, thank you. And so there is a difference, I think, especially if you're an adult. We hear a lot about the housing crisis and the rental crisis, and there is. And we've got people living in the cars with, adults who are experiencing homelessness, often with families as well, but it's at a different life stage. I always say young people and youth homelessness is not a minority group. It's like everybody's young at some point in their lives. And without a home, I'm not sure how you're expected to build your life. And you miss out on education, you miss out on your health, all those things that through development, relationships.
And I keep going back, I think you miss out on play. Like kids
being
learn
a child,
learn so much. Yeah, you're innocent.
Childhood.
That important
really
innocence. You're asked to
Coupled,
fend for yourself so early, this sense of survival.
Coupled with the discrimination from society around, teenagers, and then the systems in place that are also discriminating against you because you're younger, whether it's the police or whether it's social security systems. It's just, if you don't have that protective parent and a home, you're in big trouble. Like it's really scary. And so it is different for a child to be homeless on their own without any protective factors. And we do our best as, a youth homelessness service, but there's a limit to what a refuge bed and a support worker can do when you're just trying to find connection and also processing the loss of family and violence. And sometimes, it might be parents that are using the violence often against the young people, but then there's younger siblings that you lose as well who are still at home that you're worried about, but you've needed to escape because of your own safety. So there's a lot of trauma that comes with young people without a home. It is not about, a supply-demand housing issue. It really is a consequence of family violence and trauma. And there's a huge overrepresentation of young people in the homelessness system who are gender diverse or from the LGBTQ community, like what Elvis has said.
So it's about families not supporting individuality, not supporting difference, not supporting, their child being not what the status quo has set out. And so therefore the actions towards that child may be violent.
It's a very big risk factor.
Yeah.
There's mental health issues from families. There's huge amounts of family violence, of course.
And also what parents, their traumas and what they're suffering with and how that might manifest to the way they behave towards a child who isn't a part of the LGBTQIA plus community, just their stuff and their alcoholism or their depression or their, whatever it is, their abusive natures.
There is often an intergenerational transmission of violence that's occurring between, the grandparents and the children, and it just keeps going. And so often the perpetrator is also, has experienced violence growing up, and we're just not addressing the issue, which is leaving children and young people kind of outside of that narrative of family violence and not having a response there, which is leading just so many children and young people experiencing homelessness. And then you're finding, especially for, more vulnerable cohorts, or especially for young girls, then what are they doing to try to get shelter? Like what awful choices have they got, and what risks are they balancing up about going home to a very violent stepdad or a violent sibling, or is it going
or
home with a
mother,
stranger or a mother, going home with a stranger? Will they have to do some drugs? Will they have to do some sexual favour? Like what is it that is going to get them to sleep, or sleeping on the streets, like you said, Elvis? It's really awful, and everybody knows about it within government and the service system. This is not a secret. It's just that we don't have a dedicated response. So children and young people are not being picked for housing by landlords. And
so
there's nothing
we
to
need a
incentivise.
situation where that changes and that it's more affordable and more accessible and whatever. But we also have to look at the root of this and where it stems from, with acceptance and family violence and whatever. What is sort of MCM doing in terms of having those conversations, setting up systems that help mitigate that situation in the first place?
I think preventing family
Like,
violence
that's only
is a very,
prevention.
very hard one. I think there's some prevention and early intervention in the homelessness space that's definitely got some limited programs, but MCM's running a few to try to kind of get
Melbourne
in
City
early.
Mission.
Yes, trying to get in early to prevent a young person from ending up at the access point homeless, or working with families and trying to engage with education.
Can you repair these situations? Someone's just left home and you become aware of them, and it's about how you can, is there counselling, psych work, family therapy that can happen to reconnect
there
families?
There are some, I guess, for some, for Elvis, there's just not, wasn't right. Like, so there's two groups. I guess there's groups of young people who come to homelessness services escaping really toxic, violent homes, and we have, maybe they need a week or two in a refuge, and then there's some programs like reunification programs to see where there's group counselling or support with the family, and looking, to really try to help build that. But then there's most of the other young people. It's
not possible.
It's very dangerous, and it's more about making sure they've got a safe place.
Home.
Very dangerous at home.
Yeah.
You've got maybe the justice system involved. People in prison, coming out of prison, like it's a violent household where no child should be. These young people, a lot of them are falling between the cracks between what's the child protection system, what should be there, which is more often kind of supporting younger ones and babies, and then the adult service system. They're really falling between the gaps, these mature minors with really kind of vague and inconsistent legal rights. What can they access without identity, documents, or without parental consent, even if the parents are the ones using the violence? Often services need, for a 17-year-old, parent's consent. Well, the parent's not going to say yes, they give consent for you to go to a family violence service. So it's a really complicated space that needs to be looked at in order to really support this cohort in particular.
And many times young people are seen as, like, especially those who are not aware, when they see young people experiencing sleeping on the street, the first impression, many of the people who haven't experienced any hardship and challenges quickly judge, saying that it's a substance abuse, young people are troublemakers and things like that. But that's not the case.
That's not the root of. That's a consequence of.
For some, not for all.
Not for all. It's only 6% of people experiencing homelessness end up taking substance. I have never done it, right?
Okay.
And there are many who don't go down that road. But
what about experiencing or involving themselves in crime or theft or violence?
I don't have the stats on it, but not many. Like, I have never engaged in it. Doesn't matter how.
I think there's survival crimes, like to eat.
Yeah.
You're also in very public spaces. So, a lot of things happen behind closed doors in family homes, whether it's a party or things like that, But when you're out on the streets, if you're a coloured person, you're even more targeted. Yeah. But the violent crimes, that's not the group that we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Because there is a rise in that like the state government or that there's a rise in sort of burglaries and knife crime and stuff like that at the moment. But you're saying that is not pertaining in any way to the homeless.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And I think it's clear that people know that.
It is important. I think it's important to also acknowledge that many of those young people are experiencing violence in the home, and it's not as clear-cut as what the media reports.
Which the media report on the outcome, not on what has led to that outcome. So yes, you do have gang violence, you do have knife stuff, but why? We're not reporting on what's happening in their families.
We don't report on young people apart from justice. It seems like when things become visible, it's the justice. We're not, there's a lot of advocacy around the fact that we don't have dedicated housing for children or young people, which we do overseas.
What other countries are sort of more
Europe,
prominent?
In a lot of other countries, you've got, if a child turns up to a homelessness service alone, they get a roof over their head. In this country, it's legal to be a 16-year-old to sleep on the streets, and there's no really differentiation between a 16-year-old and a 50 or like 40-year-old.
Yeah, but you don't get the same amount of money from the government.
You get 30% less than an adult and 46% less than an older person. Yeah. Nothing's cheaper. You've also got a lot of, you don't have the rental experience. You don't have those life skills explained.
Yeah, even references, as simple as that.
Nothing. There is definitely age discrimination within the system and some barriers that the Home Time campaign, along with the 15,000 dedicated homes we want to see in the country built into the system, so we're not adults are competing with children. But we also want to see this, what we're calling the youth house penalty, the housing penalty, the youth housing penalty to be addressed, because there's some, significant barriers there to build housing. We hear all these, incredible announcements from government around billions of dollars going into housing. Well, that's great for, the mainstream, but we can't get youth housing projects up unless you sort out the financial modelling, which is, a barrier for providers to build housing for young people. So we've got a lot of work to do.
And the argument that youth homelessness is a minority compared to everyone else who's experiencing some sort of hardship or cost of living issues, or just not, it's hard to get a house than it once was. I don't think that can even be put forward as a case against, why home time is a great bloody idea.
And that's why we've got all the housing providers, whether they're housing older people, they see this more as early intervention, or they're housing women, or like everybody is behind this because they can see that there is a big problem that's really unfair here. When it comes to the 15 to 24-year-old group that are unaccompanied, as we call, they represent 15% of the overall homelessness population. Now, that's a large, for a small number of years, that's a large demographic. Yep. It is the largest.
9 years, 1/6 or so. Yeah,
and they represent less than 3% of social housing tenants, the housing for people that can't compete in the private rental market. There is a big issue here when it comes to access to housing that we need to get. We hear about lots of other groups, and everybody is needy. We do need a lot more social housing in this country, but we also need to address the equity of access issue, because I always say if we had, $100 billion invested tomorrow as an announcement in the election, that's not going to help these children, because it's a loss to put a kid in a house with that little amount of money coming from their payments.
And if I can add to that, and Shorna rightly pointed out that media and the community only talks about the justice system, especially when they are talking about young people. And I think the other reason why people don't or media don't show the root cause of homelessness and why young people, should have a dedicated housing. People, even when I am talking to people who never have experienced any hardship, they don't see themselves. They just find, okay, this is their issue. Right?
It's always someone else's issue.
It's someone else's issue. And then also, I can't relate to it because I've grown up in a privileged family and think that I grown up in a very supported family until the day I found out that I'm not supported. Right? Anyone can experience, any child can experience homelessness if things goes wrong. And I'm a big supporter of home time for obvious reasons. my own lived experience and things that I have seen that would have helped me, right? And there is literally, except you see MCM or this community organization, there's literally no talk
Mm.
about dedicated housing for young people. And I really hope that the mainstream media start talking more about it and really seeing from uh, the perspective of why, and not quickly connecting it for your own TRP to crime.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And that's where they lose the community. And that's where people can't really understand the depth of the situation.
I really value what you said there, Elvis, because it does speak to a lack of empathy and a lack
Yeah.
of compassion within community. And people had an episode in the last series, and a gentleman named Joe Seehey, who heads up an organisation called Social Health Australia, and he talked about what compassion is. He describes it, defined it as shared suffering. Yeah, to actually be in the well or the pit of another suffering, not trying to fix, change, solve, whatever. Just be with another in it, and if you can hear it, you will feel it, and you will share it with them. And then you can't not want to be a part of the action that alleviates that individual's suffering because you're now in it with them. And that speaks to connection, it speaks to oneness, which we have a lack of within community. It's always someone else's thing. It's too tough for me to deal with your stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like hearing what you're going through, it's too much. So this speaks to a lack of compassion with an empathy, which should be basic human traits that we carry. And I think conditioning and fear teaches us to separate ourselves from it at times.
I think there is a lot of stigma against young people in this country.
Yep.
I think it's easier to blame. I think when I connect
and then understand.
Yeah, and when I connect with people, I remember just talking to someone yesterday about the situation, and once she connected to the issue, so overwhelmed that you find people offering their spare bedroom. I mean, that's not the response that we need. But once you do connect, it feels like it's so overwhelming to accept that in this country we have a child homelessness problem. A rich country, I know that we're saying that we're broke, but we're a rich country, first world country, that we have at least 10,000 children who are alone and homeless, and we all know it, and there's nothing that's being done. I find it like really hard to understand why people aren't up in arms or just solving this very quickly. I still don't understand how people can accept this.
Do you think it's a part of the overwhelm of suffering within the world that people go, there's just so much suffering, how can I possibly do anything to change this? And will this one thing that I do change anything? And they just sort of back off rather than seeing that alleviating any form of suffering is a part of the gestalt of the whole thing, and alleviating some form of suffering is what every human needs to do as a duty, because that's what affects.
I think it's
the one thing affects the whole thing.
I think it's confronting for people. You'd be surprised how many people have experienced family violence. I know I talk about my own experience, and when I think there is. We did a campaign as part of Home Time, which was reflecting on me at 16, and what did home time look like, and that was just an explosion of storytelling. A lot of people came out for the first time on social media saying this is what it looked like, and it was not safe, and I didn't know where to sleep, and I was going to friends' houses. So I think there is a lot of shame, and there's a lot of stories that have not been shared because of a generation of not understanding family violence, and that was a bad temper, or that was, my choice. So I think there is this fabric of family violence that's impacted people, like older people who have never been able to kind of process that or kind of connect with it, and therefore are not seeing their own experiences as what we're talking about now.
Sort of suppress their own trauma experience, and it's almost too triggering, although I sort of can't stand that word because it's like a great word to have an avoidance response from. I always go like, if it's triggering, great. Yeah. That's where your work is,
I think for most children and young people, who have grown up with family violence, maybe it's a bit different because of your experience of it, but you normalise your experience of, like I said, bad temper, oh no, that's just they're fiery, or, I just go to my
They've
friend's
always been
house.
like
I'll
that.
just go there because it's better than being at home. There's not this understanding about insecure housing and having to couch surf or having to not go home because a lot of alcohol or drug use and I need to stay at a friend's house. They're not seeing it as family violence or abuse. And so there is a lot of stories of young people feeling, experiencing homelessness when they're younger, that is only, starting to be understood through this campaign and through other campaigns around what actually youth homelessness is. You don't have to go to a homelessness access point to be homeless, but if you can't be at home or you don't feel safe in your home because of conflict or violence, then having to, text a friend and work out where are you going to sleep that night? Is there somewhere I can be, or is there a family member I can go to that's safer? That is what we call secondary homelessness and what a lot of children and young people are experiencing today.
Guys, you have brought in quotes. I just shared one from Joe Seehey about compassion, but you have a quote that you've brought in. I'd love to hear it. Elvis, you want to start? Elvis, you start.
Okay. I always say that sometimes, especially at workplaces and why, as you said, that people don't want to, the compassion because it's a shared experience of emotions, and why people don't want to talk about it. I think it's a level of not acceptance that exists in the community once someone. So, for example, at workplaces, what I always say is like being vulnerable should not be seen as being incapable. Right. And I always talk about it like if someone is opening up about their experience and if someone is sharing that, people quickly should not judge that, oh, this person can't do that. And this happen a lot because I go talking or giving speeches on mental health and family violence and homelessness in different corporate sectors. And the people come to me after the speech and they say, oh, we can't talk about our experience because suddenly they are seen as, they can't do the job or they can't get promotion. One of my other favorite quote is from Martin Luther King. And that is, your life starts to end the day you stop to start caring about the things that matters or stop speaking about the things that matter. So it is.
Your life ends the day you start speaking about the things that matter.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you clearly speak about the things that matter. We're going to get to that in a second. Shorna?
I always say that change moves at the speed of trust. So that's by a gentleman called Stephen Covey. I think of that in the work that I do in terms of trying to change a system and the relationships important there, but also in how you look at yourself and how you trust yourself and the change that you want to make in yourself. That is also about trusting.
And I think it's really important that you brought in the word trust because trust is for me about safety and vulnerability for me is also about safety. But vulnerability can be very easily weaponized against you in an unsafe environment. And I know that we're big for vulnerability at the moment. There's a big push that really speak your truth. It's courageous to be vulnerable, and it is. I mean, I write about it in my book, but not if it's unsafe.
That's right.
Because you can suffer even more from expressing in an unsafe and untrusting environment. Shorna, can you speak to some of the dangers that young people face on the streets when they are homeless that people might not know about?
There's a lot of physical harm. There's a lot of sexual harm for all genders, especially actually for young people that are trans. It's very dangerous. There's danger from police. There's danger from other people who are experiencing homelessness if there's substance use and untreated mental health issues. There's serious physical health issues that occur because of the weather. Like it's cruel in winter, it's freezing, or it's really, really hot in summer. And we've got the impact of climate change on young people without a home or any homeless person. So I think, and that then leads to a raft of long-term chronic health issues that, you touched on before, Elvis, around your health and not just mental health, but we see a lot of young people who have that chronic pain that that stays forever due to sleeping on the concrete for a long time, or so much adrenaline in that fight-flight response of survival, maybe for 5-6 years. Every moment you're kind of on as well. So there is a raft of both systemic threats as well as health, and of course the mental health. And we sadly see in this country every 4 days a young person in homelessness die, and the majority is from suicide. So it is as much a housing issue as a health crisis, family violence crisis. It's all of it, and it's completely impacting children and young people who are alone the most. They are at the most vulnerable stage in their lives, and they are being hit the hardest out of any group.
Yeah. You're so passionate about this, Shorna. Like, this is such a heart-driven thing for you. What moment or sort of moments in your life led to you feeling compelled to be in this space?
I always reflect on this. I think when I was really young, I remember being really drawn to helping children. I didn't really understand why. I mean, it wasn't like there was a lot of people in my family that were in this space. Actually, nobody. So I always had this in me, and then that's why I ended up going to law school, because I wanted to, save the world, go work for the UN. Now I smile about that, but I didn't really quite understand, and until I was probably in my early 20s and faced significant mental health issues after a relationship breakdown. And that's when I started understanding my journey as a young person and my experience of family violence growing up, which is very often the case. It's not when you're young, but a little bit older. And that's when I started identifying the work that I was doing in the community legal sector and my clients with my own experiences. And I guess that, there is a sense of healing and recovery as I do this work. But I was also extremely privileged to have a protective parent and family on the one side, which I never had to wonder where I was going to sleep at night. So I saw my own experiences in a lot of the children, in particular the children I was working with at schools in the western suburbs. But I was very lucky because I had a home. And so that's when I decided, that's it, I'm dedicating my life to trying my absolute best to do something here about child homelessness and that connection with family violence, because I am privileged and I am in a fortunate position that I could do that work. I think I was really affected by one of my clients, this young man who had lost his mum. She died, and had this stepfather who was very violent and other younger siblings in the home, and he was really trying to get trying to sort out the legal system and he was getting kicked out of the house all the time, but he had the rights in the house, and it was just, there was no support out there for a young boy who was about 18 years old. And the next thing I heard, I hadn't heard from him for a few weeks, neither had any of the other services, and he jumped in front of the train and he died. And that's when I went, nah, this is not okay. He tried to get support, and there was no family violence support out there. He was experiencing homelessness, sleeping down by the river for a long time. And I think just feeling so helpless in that moment just made me go, no, we need to change the system. Like, the system's not working. There is no system for this kid and many, many other, especially young men who really sit outside that narrative of family violence and are often, kind of labelled perpetrators, even though they haven't perpetrated any violence. It's just because of gender. So that's when I kind of went, this is what I'm doing. And it became really clear how my own lived experience was kind of tied into, my professional and lived experience was tied into that journey of, where we've got to with home time and all the other advocacy work that I do at Melbourne City Mission, but also externally.
What was your experience of family violence?
I think family violence is really complicated when it comes to a child because you love your parent and you're also feeling very unsafe with your parent. So so my experience did not look like physical harm, which is very, often clear to people when you're experiencing family violence. It was unknown, it was unsafe, it was scary, but also tied in with a lot of love and confusion.
So was there emotional abuse? Were there other things going on in the household?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think as a child, being very scared and having to monitor your environment and a lot of kind of fight, flight kind of responses and survival responses. But as I said, I had a very protective mother and a very protective family as well. So I was lucky in that respect, but not all my childhood was safe.
Yeah. Did you feel like you were walking on eggshells at
Yes,
home?
yeah. That is probably the most common phrase that young people who experience family violence hear. You're walking on eggshells, like a bomb's about to go off.
Yeah, and that's how you felt as well. Yeah,
and that's something that doesn't go. It's something that you have throughout your whole life, and you spend a lot of time, working out tools to manage that because you're in that age where you're developing your brain, and your parents are very important in terms of how your inner voice is. And so, I think that is also a difference when it comes to a child experiencing family violence versus an adult, where your brain is still developing and you're still learning your responses to stressful situations. So it is very much something that I still, manage day to day. Something that I know a lot of my colleagues and friends and people I speak to, that's something, the mental health impacts of family violence stay with you forever.
How have you sought to work through that trauma?
Well, I did become a yoga teacher. I think that's probably...
I did my 200 hours.
I did my... Yeah, it was actually, I think most of the people in the yoga teaching course had an experience, a traumatic experience, whether it was mental health, family violence, divorce. So I think that was a good turning point for me. But, I think like what Elvis said as well, like there's conversations that you have and you realise that if you really want to change your experiences, it takes a lot of work and not giving up, I think.
Did you see a psych? Did you?
Yeah. So it was
probably
too late. I think that's the problem in the system that, as well as reflects my own experiences, that an unknown, because it's not very well understood, family violence. Definitely back in the 90s it wasn't understood. That it's important that children and young people who are experiencing family violence are also getting that trauma recovery programs and responses wrapped around them as soon as possible when they're little, and not kind of left to figure out when they're in their 20s and they're dealing with actual, significant mental health issues. So I think it's really, part of the advocacy we also do is to make sure that as early as possible you're providing those programs and support to children, not just the mother.
Yeah. So a lot of people choose the Western modality of going to see a psych, going to see a counsellor, psychiatrist, psychotherapist. You mentioned yoga. I'm mentioning that as a sort of Eastern philosophy because, yoga isn't just doing a bunch of poses. Just quickly, tell me why you were drawn to that and what it was about yoga that helped you heal.
I think my mother really encouraged me when I was a teenager to do yoga. And then I noticed when I was doing that, it was very hard. Like I couldn't lie on my back. I couldn't, it was, just staying still was something you had to learn. And I noticed through the classes that my, physiological responses slowed, and therefore your brain also can slow.
So your nervous system is quieting down.
Exactly right. Yeah. Like you need to work on your nervous system and then you can work on your mind, for me.
100%.
And so when it was a choice about going on antidepressants and I wanted to do a yoga teaching diploma at the same time. So I went, well, actually, it's not helpful to do both at the same time. I won't know if it's what's working. So I decided to go down the path of doing the yoga teaching diploma at the same time as working in a corporate law firm. So it was a good balance too there for stress. And Yeah, it was 5-6 hours every Saturday, and maybe a few hours was, the asana, the poses, the physical poses, but a lot of it was understanding the brain, a lot of breathing techniques, and really working on that physical body, like the physiological response. I always say if you're feeling anxious, the first thing you should do is just stick your legs up against the wall for 15, 20 minutes, and I promise you after that, you'll feel less anxious. It doesn't really matter what you're doing in that time, just put your legs up against the wall. So I think
working on the physical body to calm the nervous system so that the mind can slow down and see it. What's
exactly
going on.
right.
And that, we know that yoga means union. So union of mind, body, spirit, breath. Like it's the coming together of all the things. So it speaks to connection. We spoke about the importance of connection to others, but it really speaks to the connection of self. There's
really a lot of these days at Melbourne City Mission as well, like the huge amount of focus on, especially for young people who don't want to do cognitive therapies. They don't want to just talk through their, there's the art therapy is really important.
Art therapy is awesome.
And I forgot the name of it, using animal therapy.
Pet
awesome.
therapy.
Pardon?
The front yard pet therapy.
Yeah, the pet therapy, horses, there's just, I think for the young people as well, for children, that's really important.
I think talk therapy is great, but it's one modality. If we sort of go, it's the only modality, then we're missing out on so many other potential ways to help individuals. Elvis, I want to know, did you make friends? Did you gain friends that have now become a part of your support network or a part of your tribe in these times of homelessness, in these times on the street, couch surfing?
Not in the time of rough sleeping, but when I was in the hospital, someone reached out to me because they saw a comment of mine on social media. Her name is Betty, right? And she reached out to me. She connected with me on Facebook, and from that time till now, she exists in my life. Right?
Beautiful.
Every single day, without a day that goes by that she sends good morning and good night. Right? She have been a great support. She lives in Broken Hill, an amazing human being, someone that's very close to my heart. And she always it's like she's a family, right? And she have been there. It was just through social media or just through phone calls, but that time I wouldn't have done it without her support. And then we met, and she came to Melbourne to see me many times, and it's been
Beautiful.
been amazing.
So we had Elena Dokic on the show, our very first episode of season 1, and she talks a lot about her journey from victim to survivor to thriver. I feel like your journey is similar in some ways. I mean, you're now speaking on behalf of Australia to the UN. You give, multiple keynotes. You're on many, many boards, and you're an advocate for change in this space. What does that feel like?
My goal, the reason I got involved is one, to raise awareness and reduce stigma for people seeking help. That's where it started. And I really wanted to give back to the community and really be the voice for people who come from really marginalized community and who are not spoken in the system, who doesn't have that voice. And sometimes people who frame or make decisions doesn't have that understanding or have that blind spot of seeing those experiences and just understanding what people actually go through in this situation. And so I really wanted to bring that perspective and really raise the awareness around it. It feels good if you see a change that happens, you know what I mean, in things that we have done at MCM with lived experience framework and amplify report, and many things that you can see, okay, this actually made a difference. This is actually a lot of young people are benefiting from this.
How are they benefiting?
Many things that we did together is like securing housing for them and advocating for policies that actually secure housing. And Home Time campaign is one of them, is like advocating so that young people have dedicated housing. Um, Advocating with boards and government to have lived experience voices involved when you make the decision making. So really government is having that insight when you see that, okay, that's actually taken on the board. The government have started XYZ new board and they have voice of lived experience there and they really understand. And that is something for me that's a big win.
Beautiful.
And that's just, and that's what, and I think it's not just me. Many advocates are in this space because they don't want people to go through what they have gone through. And many of them advocate for change that could have helped them if that existed when they were experiencing it.
Mm. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. I have one final question for each of you. It's your final opportunity to really share your voice on this. Shorna, if I changed my physical body and became Anthony Albanese for a hot second, what's the one thing you'd want to say if you're in front of the Prime Minister?
What will you do to save these children's lives? Yeah. What will it take? Will it take every day a child dying on the streets to do something? What does it take? Does it take your own children? So I think probably, how many children dying is too many children, really, which is a awful thing to ask. But that's kind of where I'm feeling that really connecting to the decision makers for them to understand the consequences of doing nothing in this country. So I would be asking for the 15,000 dedicated tenancies for a start, and I'd be asking for them to address the financial modelling behind that's locking out kids in housing.
Beautiful. Very well said. Elvis, you're walking past or, on the outskirts of Marvel Stadium and you see a 17-year-old youth, not dissimilar to you. The one bit of advice you give to
them? Don't give up, and understand that you have a lot of power and control over your life, and you don't need anyone else. Especially, I'm referring to family here, and if a person is in similar situation to me, I will say that you can rebuild your life, and you can do that with support, and don't and don't shy away from asking for support if you need it.
Beautiful. Shorna, Elvis, thank you so much for everything you shared, your personal stories, the changes that we need. You both spoke so beautifully. Such an honour to have you both
on
the show. Lots of love.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.